So here's the hard truth that most of us avoid. If your team only performs when you're watching, you don't have a team, you have a bunch of dependencies. And dependencies, they're going to burn you out. Every one of us eventually reaches that same breaking point. Too many problems, too many decisions, too much firefighting, and guess what? Not enough time to lead. But there's a way out. When we build systems, instead of relying on talent and effort alone, our team becomes consistent, predictable, and capable, even when you're not in the room. So today, we're going to learn exactly how to build the alignment rhythms, the repeatable processes, and those performance standards that are going to turn chaos into clarity and transform your team into a self-sustaining operation. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I'm your host, John Espinosa. If your goal is to build high-performance teams, I'm going to use my 20 years of leadership experience to share what I have learned. So stick with us. Why does this matter? Leadership can scale, or you can suffocate. Systems are going to be the difference. Without systems, we carry too much. Our teams, they guess too often, and our performance is inconsistent. Vice versa, if we have systems, everyone knows how to win. Those daily decisions require less oversight, and the leader becomes a guide, not a firefighter. So today, we're going to talk about three things. First, the psychology behind why teams struggle without systems. Then we're going to discuss three types of systems that every single one of you out there need. Last, I'm going to give you an alignment rhythm. It's a simple model for predictable performance. So let's dive into the content for today. We're going to talk about first why teams fail without systems. And most teams that I've worked with, that I lead, they're not disorganized because they lack talent. They lack clarity. And when teams lack clarity, things begin to happen. So our brains, we can't handle ambiguity. We can't handle that confusion. And when we are confused, what happens? We begin to guess. We hesitate. We hesitate making decisions. We hesitate starting projects. We duplicate work, and we avoid ownership. So this is a leadership problem. This is on us as leaders out there, as business owners. And we struggle because, we struggle because our teams begin to rely on verbal direction. And if we don't give them that direction, it goes back to all of those things we talked about earlier. They begin to guess. They begin to hesitate. And so the other reason I think that leaders really struggle with this fact that we don't have any systems, we expect them to know. I had a team that, this was just recently out there, they've missed 3 to 4 months of team meetings. They're flailing in the wind. These are high performers. They're struggling. And they began to assume that they should know what to do. And that's not the case. People need direction. Even if it's the wrong direction, they need direction. The leader needs to cast that vision. So we have to establish some type of consistent communication, because without that communication, what begins to happen is when we do have to change, then people will begin to assume. And we can't wait for a problem to occur to create a system. That's not how it works, because when the problem occurs, it's normally too late. One of the things that I really want to emphasize here is, what does your team need? Your team needs direction. And in order for them to be self-sustaining, we're going to talk about three systems that every single one of you need. Before we get into that, I want to encourage you, 60% of our audience that's listening right now, they're not subscribed. Do me a favor, find that subscribe button. Click on it. Do that right now. I promise it's going to help me, and it's also going to show me that you care about the content today. So we continue to deliver you value, and we continue to make sure that you're getting the necessary, really, practices that I've learned over my 20 years of leadership. We're putting those right here in this podcast. We're making sure that you walk away with some repeatable, practical applications that you can go build your high performance team. So let's talk about these 3 systems, because action doesn't necessarily equal alignment, and confusion will never get to clarity. So the first system that we're going to implement is the system of expectation. And this identifies what winning looks like. You would be surprised that people out there, we begin to assume. And when we assume that they know what winning looks like. We assume that they understand what a successful business is. And that's not the case. How can we expect people to hit a target that they can't see or that we don't explain to them? It's like playing darts blindfolded. And the things that we have to understand, that we have to put into place when we talk about this system of expectation, is role clarity. They have to understand what their role is in an organization. I recently worked with the group, and they onboarded 3 people, 3 new employees over the past 6 months. And when I started talking to these employees, they didn't understand where their role was. The roles had changed from the previous person that had their job. Systems changed, processes changed, there was automation changes, and they didn't understand what their role was. And more importantly, they didn't understand how their role played into the bigger system. And this was a small company. We're talking 6 people here. So it's not like it was a 300-person company that somebody's just falling through the cracks. These are 3 people. This is 50% of this organization's company. And the consensus was, I onboarded very quickly. It was during the holiday season. There was a lot of people taking leave. Some things were, we weren't able to do because of that time of year. And the time passed. And by the time that 3rd month came in, the expectation was, you should know what your job is. But they never sat down and walked through what their roles were and then how that role played into the bigger organization. And when we addressed that, it made all the difference. The light bulbs came on. They were able to figure out and really create what their role was because they understood the expectation. So, hey everyone, a quick break in the episode today. Are you struggling to find and keep the right employees? You're not alone. High turnover drains time, money, and morale, leaving us frustrated, overwhelmed, and feeling like we have to settle for less. I understand how tough hiring can be because I've lived it. And with over 21 years of building high-performance teams, I know how to turn hiring challenges into lasting employee success. Through my proven lead framework, we're going to analyze your processes, design a personalized strategy, and implement solutions that create confident and long-term results. Don't let turnover hold you back. Choosing this program is that first step towards a thriving workplace. Enroll today at thejohnespinosa.com and build the team you deserve. Imagine a team that works seamlessly together or keep facing the same costly cycle of turnover. The choice is yours. Now back to our episode. This is all about creating that system of expectation. The other thing that we need to do is we need to lay out the performance standards, and we need to be crystal clear. I don't know what your performance rating is. Some people have a 1 through 5. Some people have a fully successful all the way up to exceeds. Whatever that is, each tier should have a very identifiable behavior and expectation related to those individuals. So again, it goes back to the target. if they can't see it, if they don't know what it is, how do you expect them to hit it? They're not going to. They're going to fall short every single time, or they're going to assume what that expectation was, and then they're going to get pretty upset when they thought they met the expectation and you didn't see it. So you got to have those performance standards. Write it down, put it in a performance plan, put it in a formal plan that you guys have discussions about. I would suggest quarterly, if not more, but at least on a quarterly basis, have a performance discussion. Behavioral expectations. This has to do with culture. What is the behavioral expectations for individuals? Showing up on time. What happens when they're late or they're not going to be there on time? What's that expectation? Is it a phone call? Is it a text? Is it just, hey, I'm not going to show up? Because they're going to assume the next time they're late what that expectation was. So what's that behavioral expectation? And then you have to establish decision-making boundaries. And these boundaries are very important, especially for high-performing teams or very small teams, because you don't want to be the single point of failure. And when you have to make all the decisions, you're the single point of failure. So you have to create those guidelines to make decisions to let them know that, hey, anything outside of those guidelines, I need to be involved in that decision making. If it's underneath a threshold, if it's within a time frame, if it's not going to blow a project, by 2 to 3 weeks, whatever that guideline looks like, out of scope, or maybe put it past the original deadline, make a decision. Go get the job done. Don't involve me, brief me up later, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. But those are ways that we can create a system of expectation. We have to identify for our teams, for our organizations, what winning looks like. So the second system, so that was the first one. The second one is a system of communication. This is how information moves within the organization. Teams collapse when communication is inconsistent. Back to the team that I mentioned earlier, they hadn't had a team meeting in 3 to 4 months. It even became a running joke whenever the meetings got canceled on a weekly basis. Well, there goes another meeting opportunity. There goes another missed opportunity to ask questions or to create clarity. That was the joke of the organization. Do you want that to be the joke in your organization or your team that you're leading? Because I don't. So how are we going to create the system of communication so we're moving information both in and out of our teams and our organizations? The first one, weekly alignment meetings. I take opportunities to have team meetings. These aren't status updates. These are weekly alignment meetings. What are the things that you need to accomplish your job? What's getting in the way? What are your successes? Share some best practices. This isn't, hey, John, yeah, we're 75% complete. We're in the red, and we're going to probably hit the mark. I get that into a project sheet. That's not something that I'm going to spend a meeting for. So these weekly alignment meetings, very, very important to create, again, how we move communication throughout the organization. The next one is stand-ups or check-ins. I do this through my one-on-one meetings. I schedule 30 minutes. Sometimes we take 30 minutes. Sometimes they're, hey, I'm good to go. They're a 5-minute meeting. We just touch base. They see me. I see them. We're done. But those stand-ups and those check-ins, what they allow us to do is they're consistent. I don't move meetings. I do not move those meetings out of the way if something comes on top of them. I just don't show up for the other meetings because that is important to me. That's where we communicate on a one-on-one basis, and that's their opportunity to bring me whatever challenges, whatever's going on, their concerns. Hey, John, something just isn't jiving with me. I need more understanding. I need you to create clarity. We use those words within our organizations, within my teams, because that tells me, all right, I need to clarify the ask. I need to make sure that everybody's walking away with the same interpretation of what I said, because there was some miscommunication there. So even if we go back to the weekly check-ins, those alignment meetings, the next meeting, I'm going to address maybe the confusion in the room, because if one person on your team has a question, there's probably more. The other things, project dashboards. I've seen organizations do really well at dashboarding. And then I've seen organizations have a bunch of dashboards that mean absolutely nothing, or they don't use them. So if you are creating project dashboards, it's important that that information is up to date, it's valid, and it's reliable, period. Because the first time that there's erroneous or bad information on a dashboard, there's a trust notch. The second time, they're not going to go back to it a third time. So we have to make sure that our dashboards, they're valid, they're reliable, and they're up to date. The thing here also, when we talk about communication, how do we resolve conflict in the organization? That's a big part of communication. I recently had a meeting, and there was an individual on the meeting that I was looking at, and I could tell something was wrong. So after the meeting, during a one-on-one, I just text him or IM'd him, and I said, "Hey, you got a minute to talk?" And I simply asked them, "I just noticed your mannerisms in the meeting. It was unlike you. What's going on? Is there something, I see this. Is there something behind it?" And it was. They got upset with something that somebody said, and so we were able to talk through that and resolve that conflict. Imagine if that conflict didn't get resolved. Now those two individuals are working on a project, and guess what? Now they're holding a grudge. And so that may get in the way of their relationship, of the project, and ultimately the project getting done. So conflict resolution. Again, how are you moving communication around your organization? There will be conflict. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So talk about it. Talk about it. How we resolve conflict when there is no conflict. So when the conflict does come into the situation, now we've talked about it. It's not such a heavy lift for an organization when we understand what that conflict resolution looks like. And then last, define communication channels. So there are a variety of communication channels within our organizations. You can probably name 3 just right off the bat: emails, instant messaging, and probably some type of broadcast notifications that go out. Those are 3 primary ones for a lot of the organizations that I lead. What do you disseminate in each one of those communications? Broadcast email, just wide information. You got to get something out, organizational, maybe updates, standard operating procedure updates, those types of things. Emails, those are where I'm going to document decisions, maybe MOUs, memorandums of understanding, agreements, those types of things. And then IMs, quick bursts of information, quick updates. So that's how we've defined our communication channels, but that system of communication is important. So that's number 2. What's number 3? System accountability. So here we're going to talk about how progress is measured. And accountability shouldn't be a punishment. We need to look at accountability as clarity. So when we talk about what the system of accountability looks like, there are some things that we need. Clear key performance indicators, KPIs. What are those metrics? Because if it's not being measured, it's probably not important to the organization, and it's not going to get done. Scheduled reviews. I call them PMRs, program management reviews. I do this with my sub-teams. I do it with the bigger teams. I even do it with organizations that we have cross products. So maybe we have inputs and outputs to their processes, and they have inputs and outputs to our processes. These are quarterly. They're scheduled. We bring things. We take our key performance indicators, and we look at if they're a shared key performance indicator, if they're leading, if they're lagging, all of those things that you do in a performance environment, we hold each other accountable to them. Progress tracking. I do this through, again, whether it's a list, whether it's Gantt charts, whether it's an official project manager. In organizations that have a project manager, consider yourself lucky, because some of the smaller project or organizations that I work for, the boss is the project manager. The business owner is the project manager. So if you have project management software, that's another way that we can track progress to make things sure things are not just on time, but your resources are allocated. Where are your resource constraints? Where are people being overloaded? A lot of times, there's only so many hours in the day. You don't want to burn people out. So something has to slip. And then we got to go back to the priorities. So progress tracking, very important when we talk about a system of accountability. Ownership assignments, who has what? I found that especially when you have even small projects, even small projects, I was going to say big projects, but even small projects, you got to have a single point of contact, period. If you have multiple points of contact, what I found is nobody really has the ball. And I'm talking about the metaphorical basketball. But if I got the ball and that's my project, I got to have updates. I got to be ready, to explain, to track progress, all of that kind of stuff. If there's two people sharing that basketball, guess what? A lot of times I found it just doesn't work out as well. So make sure that you are very clear on who owns what part of that process or who owns what part of that project. And then last but not least, what are those visible outcomes? So those are 3 systems that every single team needs. And it's something that I go in and we implement, especially when there's a lack of processes or we do have systems, but people aren't being held accountable to them. Because remember, when we start with the expectation, and then we have no follow-up with accountability, what's lacking there? A lot of times it's the communication. So you really need all 3: system of expectation, system of communication, and then that last system of accountability. All 3 of them work hand in hand. Got it? All right, let's move on to our last one. Now, how do we weave them into our culture? How do we make them everyday practices? I'm going to give you this alignment rhythm loop. I'm a big rhythm person. You've heard me talk about establishing rhythm. That's how we weave things into our culture. So just remember, we talked about really the mindset behind why systems are important, and then the 3 systems that every leader should have within their organization. Now we're going to discuss how do we weave that into our day-to-day. The first step, weekly priorities. Remember, never assume alignment. Make sure that we define these together. So every week, a Monday stand-up meeting is just a quick, hey, these are the priorities this week. Go forth and conquer. Doesn't have to be long, but everybody is on the same page. Step 2, those daily micro checkpoints. Now, these aren't status updates. These are those one-on-ones, for me at least. So the opportunity here is we remove the obstacles, we confirm the progress, and then we recalibrate. If you got conflicting priorities, we got to recalibrate those priorities. Back to the project tracking, if you got a single resource that's being double tasked, and maybe within that project plan, there's supposed to be 2 places in the same day, unless you know of a cloning machine, guess what? You're going to have to deconflict those priorities for them. So those are what step 2, those daily micro checkpoints. Step 3, weekly accountability reviews. These are with the team. So now, what got done, what didn't get done, why didn't it get done, and what's next? These are those weekly reviews. What's getting in the way? Okay, all of those why questions. You can go down the why chart, ask those 5 why questions. Those are things that you're going to have in that weekly accountability review. And then step 4, we got to have some type of monthly system adjustments. So again, what systems broke? Because our systems will break. Maybe somebody leaves the organization. Maybe a system is down, an application that we're using to track progress. Maybe that goes down. What broke? What slowed us down? And what do we need to refine? And that is going to keep our systems evolving, because I found companies and organizations, and trust me, I've ran businesses that I've fallen into this trap. We create a checklist, standard operating procedures, and then we put it on the shelf and we never refine that system. We never evolve the system. So if we follow these alignment steps, 1, weekly priorities, 2, those daily micro checkpoints, 3, the weekly accountability reviews, and then follow it up with step 4, those monthly system adjustments, it's going to keep our systems fluid. It's going to keep them evolving. So as we wrap up today, you don't have to scale by working harder. We scale by becoming replicable in the day-to-day operations, and systems are going to help us make that possible. So what do we talk about? We talked about that guesswork, it creates chaos. Systems are going to help us create that clarity, and rhythm, it's going to keep us consistent. So if your team can't win, if the rules change every single day, give systems a try. Systems give them a field where they can finally play on. If you're ready to eliminate that guesswork, reduce all of the daily firefighting that you're probably getting tired of, and build a team that performs without constant oversight, go check out one of our programs, thejohnespinosa.com. Together, we're going to build a leadership system that's going to help you scale and keep your high performers. I believe in you. Go be great. Talk to everyone on the next episode.